The dog carefully held the rope in its mouth, crawling cautiously across the thin ice. It was trying to rescue Dr. Davis, who had fallen into the water, but the sound of cracking ice echoed around, causing the dog to freeze in fear. Meanwhile, Davis, shivering uncontrollably in the icy river, was barely holding on, his body stiff from the cold, and he was on the brink of falling in completely. The dog watched this unfold, and the mission to save a life overcame its fear of death. Without hesitation, it grabbed the rope again and continued forward, disregarding its own safety. Finally, the dog reached Davis and slipped the rope around his neck. Watching as Davis used his last bit of strength to loop the rope around his arm, the dog felt assured and turned to retreat. Then, following its owner's command, all the dogs pulled together, successfully dragging Davis out of the deadly icy river. Though Davis was saved, his body was covered in frostbite, and his leg was broken. Even worse, an unprecedented blizzard was fast approaching. Jerry knew there was no time to waste. He quickly strapped Davis onto the sled and wrapped him tightly. He then adjusted the positions of the sled dogs, placing Maya, the lead dog, at the very front of the team. Jerry pinned all his hopes of survival on Maya, the lead dog. With Jerry's command, the dogs gave it their all, racing ahead, desperately heading towards the camp. But the storm hit earlier than expected due to the delay in their journey. Jerry, exhausted and frozen, collapsed onto the sled. Maya sensed the danger and pushed herself and the team to run even harder. She knew that only by returning as quickly as possible could her owner be saved. After an uninterrupted, frantic run, they finally reached the camp. Their companions rushed out to help when they saw the returning sled team. Jerry gratefully praised his dogs. Maya barked joyfully in response to her owner. After an initial assessment, it was clear that Davis was in critical condition and needed to be taken back for medical treatment immediately. Paul's fingers were also blackened from frostbite, and if not treated quickly, amputation would be necessary. And with the blizzard growing stronger, they needed to evacuate as soon as possible. However, the plane was too small to take the dogs with them, so they had to leave the dogs at the camp, planning to return for them after transporting the injured. Jerry couldn't bear to leave the dogs behind and wanted to wait for the next plane with them, but his frostbite also required urgent treatment, and Katie assured him that they would definitely return for the dogs. Reluctantly, he agreed to leave the dogs at the camp temporarily, while they were gathering their gear. The young dog Max broke free from its chain and ran over, wanting to leave with its owner. Seeing that Max could break free from the chain, Jerry and his companion tied him up again. Worried that the dogs might break loose after they left and get into danger, they tightened all the dogs' ropes. Finally, Jerry spoke to Maya, the lead dog.
I'm in line, alright, and I'll be back. I promise.
As the plane took off, the dogs realized they were being abandoned by their owner and barked desperately in the direction of the plane. But Maya stood silently, watching the departing plane without barking or causing a fuss, because she firmly believed that her owner would not abandon them and would return to bring them home. But what she didn't know was that this wait would last 180 long days and nights. No separation is without pain, though the way it's expressed may differ. Jerry leaned against the window, his spirits low, covering his head with his hat to hide the sadness and worry in his heart. 3 days later, Jerry woke up in his hospital bed, immediately asking his companion if the dogs had been brought back. But his companion hesitated and couldn't give a clear answer, causing Jerry to feel a surge of panic. He hurried to find Katie to ask, only to learn that the winter expedition plans had been cancelled. The earliest they could return to the camp would be in the spring, which meant the dogs, left without food or water and still chained, would certainly perish. Jerry couldn't accept this reality and stormed into the base command center, pleading with the commander to send a plane to rescue the dogs. But the commander refused immediately upon hearing it was just to save 8 dogs. Moreover, an even bigger blizzard was about to hit, threatening to cover the entire Antarctic in snow and ice, requiring the entire base to be evacuated to New Zealand. Faced with this outcome, Jerry, despite his unwillingness, was powerless and forced himself not to think about the tragic fate awaiting the dogs. When Jerry returned to Washington 5 days later, he hadn't given up on the dogs who had fought alongside him and went to the relevant authorities, hoping for a chance to return and save them. But the answers he received were absurd. Approval for the expedition's funding would take 8 months to process. The research base also provided an unacceptable answer. The entire expedition plan was cancelled, and Antarctica was facing the worst blizzard in 25 years, making any action impossible. By this time, the 8 dogs had been alone in Antarctica for 5 days, with Maya still leading her team, waiting for their owner's return. As the wind and snow intensified, the camp's flags were blown away. At that moment, the strongest dog, Bach, broke free from his chain and chased after the blowing flag. Even without their owner, he was determined to protect everything here. The other dogs also became restless, straining at their collars. Finally, even the usually obedient Maya broke free and charged out. Seeing Buck retrieve the flag, the dogs excitedly gathered around him. As if cheering for Buck, they barked and playfully chased each other. But the youngest dog, Max, was too small and started spinning in circles in frustration. Only the oldest dog, Old Jack, lay still, exhausted from the days of hunger and cold, with no strength left to break free from his rope. Despite being free, the dogs didn't run wild. They stayed at the camp, enduring hunger for 15 days, never leaving the site. They feared that their owner might return and not find them, until one day, a seabird flew into the camp. Max was the first to see it, and he immediately perked up, barking to alert the other dogs. Using all his strength to break free from his chain and chase after the bird, the other dogs followed suit, eagerly running after the bird. At this point, all the dogs had freed themselves, except for Old Jack, who remained motionless. Maya wanted to bite through Old Jack's chain to free him, but Old Jack refused. Maya gently nudged Old Jack, trying to encourage him to get up. But Old Jack, sensing that his time was near, didn't want to burden the team any longer and declined Maya's help. Understanding Old Jack's intentions, Maya licked his head in a final farewell. She still had to lead the team of dogs to survive. So, with no choice, she left Old Jack behind. After rejoining the group, Maya noticed a large flock of seabirds gathered at the bottom of the hill. Excited, Max barked wildly at the birds, causing them to scatter in fright. Fortunately, they didn't fly far and landed nearby again. Seeing this, Maya immediately stepped forward as the leader and took charge. She issued the command to capture the birds, and the dogs quickly began to execute the plan. Maya then turned to Max and scolded him, ordering him to stay put and not move. Max was young and easily excited, so he obediently stayed in place, following the command. When the other dogs reached their designated positions, Maya crouched down and slowly approached the birds. When she was close enough, she gave the signal and swiftly charged at the birds. The startled birds began to scatter, and at that moment, the other dogs, who had been waiting in ambush, quickly closed in from the other side. Max, who had been punished and made to sit on the sidelines, was amazed, barking in excitement as he cheered for his companions. The dogs successfully caught a few seabirds, but none of them ate the birds on their own. Instead, they brought the catches to Maya, waiting for their leader to redistribute the food. Max, who had made a mistake, didn't get any food. He lowered himself, pleading with Dewey to share some food, but Dewey firmly refused. Left with no choice, Max approached Shadow. The always good-natured Shadow shared a small portion of his food with Max. Time slipped away unnoticed, and the dogs had been surviving on their own in Antarctica for 50 days. They saw the aurora for the first time. Curious Max couldn't stay still and excitedly chased the colorful lights, playing around. The other dogs, too, were thrilled and joined in the fun. In this place without any human care, these moments of joy were particularly precious. But just as they were having the most fun, Dewey accidentally stepped on some snow and fell off a cliff. Maya immediately sensed something was wrong and hurriedly led the others down to check. But Dewey was lying on the ground, motionless. The dogs were heartbroken seeing Dewey so badly injured. His twin brother, Truman, lay on top of him, trying to keep him warm. The other companions also stayed quietly by his side. That night, the wind and snow were especially harsh, mercilessly battering the dogs. The next morning, they were buried under a thick layer of snow, one by one poking their heads out of their snow nests. Maya had stayed by Dewey's side the whole time, but Dewey never woke up again. The dogs softly whined as they said goodbye to their brother. Truman, crying, groomed his dear friend's fur for the last time. Though they were devastated, they had no choice but to leave in sorrow. Maya still had to lead her companions to survive, but Max couldn't bring himself to leave. He lay down next to Dewey's cold body, filled with deep guilt. If it hadn't been for his playful nature, Dewey might not have gotten hurt. He tried to wake his friend, but no miracle happened. Despite his reluctance, he had to choose to leave. But at that moment, the raging snowstorm blurred his vision. His companions were nowhere to be seen, and he anxiously called out, but there was no response. Just like that, he became separated from the group. On their 133rd day of survival, the starving dogs were so hungry that they were reduced to eating the snow on the ground. At that moment, Maya seemed to have spotted something and led her companions charging forward. They found a supply station, and luckily, there was still some food stored inside. The dogs happily feasted and then lazily lay on the ground. Only Maya stood at the entrance, gazing into the distance, worried about Max's safety after he had been separated from the group. Meanwhile, Max had returned to the camp, but the gate was tightly locked, and he couldn't get inside. It was a mystery how he had survived for so many days. On the 152nd day, Max was lucky enough to find a beached whale. He didn't have time to think and rushed over in excitement. Just as he was about to enjoy his meal, a seal suddenly burst out of the whale's body, baring its fangs at him. Max thought about putting up a fight, but faced with the seal's much larger size, he had no choice but to retreat for now. As he ran off to the side to think of a plan, a clear sound caught his attention. He looked up to see Maya leading the others in search of him, the long-lost companions following behind. After a brief exchange of looks with Maya, Max felt confident again. He ran back to the seal and began to taunt it, even tearing off a large chunk of meat right in front of its eyes. Having successfully provoked the seal, he quickly turned and ran. Sure enough, the seal took the bait and plunged into the icy water, madly chasing after Max. At that moment, Maya gave the order, and the group quickly rushed to the whale, eagerly devouring the food. The seal, desperately chasing Max, soon realized it had been tricked and quickly turned back toward the hole. Max tried to warn them, but it was too late. The seal lunged out of the hole and sank its teeth into Maya's hind leg. The companions were scared and quickly retreated, but Max wasn't intimidated at all. He rushed forward, leaping onto the seal and biting it fiercely. Seeing this, Maya urgently commanded the other dogs to join the attack. Under the relentless assault from the pack, the seal squealed in pain and eventually fled in panic. Unfortunately, Maya's leg was injured, and she collapsed weakly to the ground. But as the leader, she had to continue leading the others forward. In this icy wilderness, only by filling their stomachs could they have the strength to survive. Even with a broken leg, she needed to help her companions replenish their energy. It was the fullest they had eaten in 152 days. As time passed, Maya's injury worsened, and the pain in her leg made it impossible for her to stand. She lay down helplessly. Seeing this, the other companions gathered around her. Maya was the soul of their team. If Maya fell, they would lose their anchor and ultimately perish in this vast, dangerous white world. In the following days, Max led the other dogs in hunting. They would still bring their prey to Maya, waiting for her to distribute the food. But this time, Maya limped over and gave the food back to Max. Max was puzzled, not understanding Maya's intentions. The other companions, however, immediately understood. They all placed their caught food in front of Max and then lined up, waiting for him to distribute it. In their hearts, Max had grown from a naive youngster to a mature leader after 170 days of hardship. They fully supported Maya's choice, and Max realized the weight of his responsibility, personally placing food in front of Maya. He didn't want the former leader to give up. After the others took their food, Max stayed with Maya, encouraging her to stay strong and hold on until their owner returned to bring them home. Meanwhile, their owner Jerry constantly thought of the dogs. Ever since they parted, he had been trying every possible way to return to Antarctica, but each result left him disappointed, as all his requests were rejected. Desperate, Jerry sought out Davis, although Davis warmly welcomed his visit. When Jerry showed him the old photos of him with the dogs in Antarctica and asked for Davis's help in bringing them back, Davis responded by saying,
"It's not possible, Jerry. It's just not possible. And you gotta find a way to forget about it."
Jerry suddenly felt a deep sense of helplessness, and his guilt only grew stronger. He then sought out the Native American chief who had sold him the dogs, apologizing for not taking care of them. But when the chief told him a story and said,
"Finding that one thing that will truly put your heart at rest,"
Jerry realized what he needed to do. Davis, after discovering the Mercury meteorite in Antarctica, received an award. He thanked his family, the sponsors who funded him, and the scientific research organizations, but he never thanked Jerry or the dogs who saved his life. Watching Davis's speech left Jerry feeling disappointed once again. During their conversation, Jerry told Davis that even without anyone's help, he would go to Antarctica alone. Their meeting ended abruptly, but when Davis returned home after the reception, he saw a drawing by his son. It was an abstract picture of 8 dogs, with a caption that read, "The hero dogs who saved my dad." Indeed, a child's innocence is pure and straightforward, untainted by the hypocrisy and calculation of the adult world. Davis was deeply moved by his son's drawing. When Jerry arrived in New Zealand to rent a boat, he found no one willing to take the risk. Just as he was losing hope, he was surprised to find Katie there. She was accompanied by an old friend, and it turned out that Davis had arranged everything. He had been touched by his son's innocent heart and used his research funds to make this rescue mission possible. They rented an icebreaker, which tore through the thick ice, heading towards the place of hope. However, when they were just over 100 kilometers away, they were stopped by a 6-foot thick ice sheet. Unable to go any further, just as frustration began to set in, a colleague who was skilled with maps stepped forward and proposed a new route. They only needed to take a helicopter to reach the Italian base. From that transfer point, they could reach the old camp using tracked snow vehicles. After many challenges, the group finally returned to the camp on the 180th day. Jerry, filled with anxiety, approached the chains, hesitating for a long time before looking. He gently brushed away the snow and found old Jack, who had long since passed away. Jerry was overwhelmed with guilt. He thought all the dogs had frozen to death there, but as he continued to inspect the chains, he discovered a broken collar, and hope instantly surged within him. At that moment, Max heard the commotion at the camp and excitedly led the others running toward him. After 180 days apart, they had finally been reunited with their owner. Jerry began to call out the dogs' names, one by one.
Hey, Buck! Okay, not the face, not the face, not the face! Boy, Max. Boy, Max.
He looked toward the distant hill with hopeful eyes, but Maya and Dewey never appeared. Jerry then prepared to take the dogs away, but Max, barking, refused to get into the vehicle and instead turned and ran toward the hill. Jerry quickly followed and found a heartbreaking scene. Maya lay quietly in the snow, motionless. He knelt beside her, tears of sorrow streaming down his face. Filled with guilt and regret, he was so heartbroken that he couldn't even bring himself to touch Maya's body. But just then, Maya's eyes fluttered open. When he reached out to touch her, Maya miraculously woke up. In this pristine Antarctic land, a touching story unfolded between man and dog. The dogs had survived for over 180 days on their own. They never gave up on themselves, nor on their loyalty and faith in their owner. Likewise, Jerry never gave up on them. Even in the face of countless challenges, he never wavered in his determination to find the dogs. It wasn't just a rescue of the dogs by the man, it was a redemption of life and soul. Always keep your original intentions, and no matter how hard it gets, never give up, because your promise is all they ever wanted for their entire life.